Hey everyone, it's Blair here at Time Trades. Thanks for joining. I wanted to do an update on what I've learned about Bitcoin over the last week or so. Continue to watch this really closely. It's at a very interesting point in time at the moment. So let's dig right in. First thing that I discovered yesterday while I was working on fixing a bug, I was playing around with the perfect square weeks feature down here. And I turned this on and I was really surprised to see this massive stack of perfect square weeks coming in starting next week. So if you don't know what a perfect square week is, this is a Gann technique, and what he did is he would count the number of days or weeks from a major pivot. And then when that count is a perfect square, meaning that the square root is an integer, so like 4 or 9 or 16, they all have nice whole number square roots. So when the count was a perfect square, in Gann's methods, he would indicate that as a potential turning point. So you can see here how there's, usually 1 or 2 or 0 or sometimes even 3 perfect squares. Look at how this stack of 3 perfect squares lines up nicely with that low. This stack of 3 lines up nicely with that high. So there's no real correlation of perfect squares from a low to predicting either a pivot high or a pivot low. It just seems to have some predictive power over a reversal of any type. So on the bottom here, I've got pivot lows. I'm counting weeks from pivot lows, and on the top, I'm counting weeks from pivot highs. So one of the things you'll find in the count is I indicate the date of the pivot. That's not the exact date of the pivot. So when you're using this and you're mousing over this, you might say, oh, well, the pivot really wasn't on January 4th, 2021. It was, January 6th or 7th. I'm just showing the date of the Monday of that week. That's all. So I'm just narrowing it down so that you can go back in time. If you want to check, you can do that. So the nice thing is Time Trades automatically finds pivots and automatically counts days and weeks from those pivots. So we've got this cluster of 5 coming in here. What does this mean? Well, I like to incorporate it into the rest of the context of what I'm seeing. I'm seeing some probability of down days here, and I'm seeing this relatively low probability pivot low. It's only 12% net probability of a pivot low on May 3rd. One other thing that's interesting is happening next week is there's also there's not an eclipse, but Mars is going to be conjunct an eclipse point on April 30th. So as I drill down and do this analysis, I'm going to go back and kind of redo the steps that I did last week. So I'm going to make use of the Influencers tab. I want to figure out what planets have the most influence over a pivot low here. And again, I just like to scan the totals line. So this is showing conjunctions between the moon and certain angles of different planets. Now, what Time Trades does is the machine learning will identify those days in the data, and the machine learning will assign a weight to each of these events. And really what we're showing here, this number is the weight that was assigned. So after training it, the result is an optimized model with weights that are properly weighting each of these occurrences. So we're going to take advantage of this fact, and we're going to look at those with the biggest numbers so that we can zero in on what aspects and what planets have the biggest influence over the pivot low behavior. Okay, so it looks like anything over 3 is a good place to start. So we've got the Sun at 3.28, Venus at 3.37, the North Node at 3.62, and Mars at 3.52. So if we wanted to extend out to some slower planets, we could, but let's stop there. We've got 4. Okay, so we've got Sun, Venus, North Node, and Mars. All right, so we're going to go back to the chart and we're going to put these on our chart using the Wheel of 24 feature. So I'm going to start by showing the 24 lines. And by the way, I know the Wheel of 24 is a little glitchy at the moment, especially with Bitcoin. If you go and do this yourself and turn on the 24 lines and your screen turns orange, then you just need to adjust this conversion factor down here. So increase it. I think for some reason it's defaulting to like 24 or something ridiculous. And you can see how that turns your screen orange. So just increase that up until this number at the bottom, which is like the price conversion factor, gets to something useful like 7,200. 7,200 works pretty good. So we've got 24 lines turned on, and we're going to show the sun, and we're going to show Venus and the North Node and Mars. Okay, so what is this adding to our analysis here? Let's get this out of the way. So we went over some of this before, but you can see how the Venus channel, which is the blue channel, is respected really well by Bitcoin, and also same thing with the Sun channel. You could probably use either of those as very good astronomical trend lines. The other thing that's crazy is just how much support the North Node provides, right? Like anytime this thing probes below the North Node, there's an immediate rally back. But then something that I discovered this week that I didn't mention on last week's video is we've got this interesting Wheel of 24 conjunction here on May 3rd between Mars and the North Node, okay? So those are, this isn't necessarily an astronomical conjunction because we're using the Wheel of 24. The Wheel of 24 divides the sky into 24 different spokes. So each of those spokes basically contain a degree point, right? So what this means is when things are conjunct on the Wheel of 24, it means both Mars and the North Node are in the same same spoke, meaning the same multiple of 24. So in a given within the wheel, there's 24 spokes, and each lap around the wheel consists of 15 numbers. So 24 times 15 is 360. So that's why it's called the Wheel of 24. But if you want to learn more about this, highly recommend the book The Universal Clock by John Long. Okay, so we've got this interesting conjunction here. Again, it's a conjunction on the Wheel of 24 happening right on May 2nd and 3rd between the North Node and Mars. And this is also on a date where there's a pivot low. And that's also coming at the end of a week where there is 5 separate perfect square days coming from prior pivots, dating all the way back to 2017. This is one of the things I love about time trades, by the way, is that I don't think any of you have are counting pivot square weeks going all the way back to highs on pivot highs in 2017. Time Trades does this for you, so that's kind of a cool little feature. All right, so I think all of this is lending to a significant tradable low happening late this week in Bitcoin. And I'm going to be watching the end of the week very closely here. You can see like the downside momentum is starting to decline. But the conditions are there, especially with these five perfect square weak points coming in. The conditions are there for potential for a panic low or a spike down. Now that I'll be looking at any of these price levels where Mars intersects the North Node. So there's really 3 scenarios that I envision. One is just a grind sideways through this, and then a takeoff from there. Second is maybe a spike lower to the next harmonic down, and this is around 44K. And then the extreme bear scenario would be around 36K. I have no idea which one of those scenarios it will take. All I know is that conditions are good for a nice entry point on May 2nd or 3rd, around there. Okay, so I hope that helps. Have a great week trading, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.